In today's video, I'm going to show you how to take a dull scene like this and transform it into a serene, beautiful, fine art scene just like this. Now, this is a little outside my usual style. It's very much more sort of digital art and photo manipulation than I normally do, but I think it's a really, really cool effect, and it does completely transform what would otherwise be a fairly forgettable scene into something much more interesting, something very minimalist and very fine art that you can imagine being as a nice print on the wall. Credit where it's due though, I got the inspiration for the edit from a photographer on Instagram with the handle of Thomas Photomas. Their work uses a lot of this kind of blurring motion with a static figure in the scene. So if you do like this kind of style, do make sure to go and check out their Instagram account. I will leave a link to that in the description below. I don't know this photographer, we've never spoken, but you know, it's where my inspiration came from, and I think it's always good to kind of call that out when you can. But let's dive into Photoshop and actually make a start. So this is the base image, and it's basically fine. I've done a little bit of exposure adjustment, and I just sort of cleaned up a couple of little rocks and things on the beach, but for the most part, you don't really need to clean things up because of that motion blur that we're going to put in. Now, starting off with this image, I wanted to have something that is already quite minimalist. We've got this big, open, expansive beach, the sea behind, this big sky with some nice cloud detail, and then we've just got these two little figures walking on the beach. So it already kind of has that feeling of solitude and of like peace and tranquility, which I think is very much like the sort of moods that you can capture by using this technique. But it also means that I'm working from a single image. I'm not photoshopping in figures into a different scene. I am working from an image that I took specifically to try and use this technique. So I do feel that it's very much kind of blending the actual photo taking as well as the Photoshop work. This isn't entirely digital art. There is an element of photography still in this, but enough chatter, let's get on. So we're going to start off, I'm just going to duplicate that background layer so that I've got that to go back to and reference. Now, the first thing that I need to do is cut these figures out of the frame. If we just blur the background with the figures in place, then they are going to look, it's going to look very, very weird, and it gets a little bit wrong, basically. So we start off by doing that. Doesn't need to be super accurate. What we're going to do is use the magnetic lasso tool, and we're just going to go around both these figures. Because we're zoomed in so much, because these figures make such a small percentage of the actual image, you know, you don't need to be super rough. You can do this with the pen tool. If you know how to use the pen tool, there are other techniques you can use. You know, the way that the angles of the leg are from this distance, it already looks a little bit sort of wobbly, but that's just the way that they were walking. But I'm going to go down and make sure that I capture the reflections, the shadows on the water as well, because we want to make sure that we keep those in our shot. There we go. So we've got that outline. Then we just need to go on, make sure that deselect is, or subtract from the selection is selected. And we just go around inside. And again, we can be pretty rough, but the magnetic element of this tool will sort of do most of that work for us. And then close it off. Then I'm just going to go to select, modify, and then I'm going to feather that selection by, I think maybe 3 pixels, just so it's not quite a harsh edge. It is sort of blended slightly. Control or Command C and V, it pastes them onto a new layer. And that's going to be very important, because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get the patch tool. I'm going to vaguely draw around them like this, drag it over here, let go, oops, turn them off that layer. In fact, you know what? That feathering I did was a bit too much, because as you can see, they look like very ghostly shapes. So let's actually go back, undo that, undo feather. There we go. Okay, fine. So now let's go select, modify, feather. I'm just going to feather by 1 pixel this time. There we go. Same again, copy and paste onto a new layer. Let's turn that off, and let's do that again. We're learning in real time here. This is good. Could not use the patch, blah, blah, blah. Okay, yeah, wrong layer. Select that right layer. Drag this across. Let go. Deselect. And they're gone. Now we go back. We can turn them on and off, on and off. So it already kind of looks like they've been photoshopped in place. They haven't, because that's the same thing, but let's consider that a good start. So now we need to actually add in the blurring motion, and we're not just going to do that with any old blur. If we used Gaussian blur, then it would blur it all in one uniform way, and we wouldn't get any of that nice motion. So that's not good. If we go filter, blur, motion blur, you can use, as long as everything is on the one straight line, because it will just blur things in one direction like this. I mean, you can slightly change the angle, but it isn't what we want. Instead, we're going to go to the blur gallery, and we're going to go to path blur. And this is going to allow you to draw lines across your image, and it will follow that blur. Now that's great, because we can put one right up here, following that horizon, right in a straight line. But then, of course, this, the beach is sort of curving upwards. Oops, let's not put that one in there. So what I'm going to do is draw another one like this, and then we're going to bend it around slightly. I'm going to do another one here. That's going to follow exactly the line of the coast. Finally, I'm going to do another one like this, and I'm going to bend it in like this. So you can see how it's kind of building up that blur direction. So it's very much following the lines of the beach. So that is really how you get that actual nice sort of bending of your blurring motion. Now, crucially though, it's not that blurry because our speed is only at 50%. So let's whack that right up. In fact, you know what? Let's take it basically to the max. We are going to 500%. Don't worry about tapering or endpoint speeds. It's kind of irrelevant at this point. I think this is already looking pretty great. So let's go OK. And it'll just take a few moments, depending on how powerful your machine is, to apply that blur. Perfect time for a little slurp of coffee. Delightful. Okay, so there is our blurred layer, and it's 90% of the way there now, to be honest. What I'm going to do, though, is go onto this layer and go Filter and Camera Raw Filter, which basically brings up the same tools you would have in Lightroom, because now we've done that blur, now we've turned it into this bit more abstract, fine art scene. We can stand to put on some fairly heavy edits in order to make it stand out a lot more. So I'm going to up our whites, add in a lot more contrast. I'm going to up that exposure as well. We can really amp up that contrast. That brings in some more of those colors. Maybe bring down some of those highlights. But you know what? I'm actually going to up the highlights here. But then I'm going to bring in a linear gradient tool and just try and bring down. If you hold shift, you can straighten it up like this. I'm going to bring down the highlights in the sky, bring down the exposure, just bringing back some more of that lovely blue tone there, which looks really nice. Maybe up the contrast a touch. That's good. Go back to our regular layer. This is all looking really nice. You know, we can play with the dehaze. We can go big on these colors, big on this contrast, and emphasizing like these lines in there, because it's all going to add to this nice sort of mystical feel that we've got. And I love the way that, because we use that curving path blur, that we've got this nice sort of waviness to the beach line that follows the lines that were there. So it's really about applying this to what was already there. It's not creating these shapes out of nothing. Let's go into our color mixer, because we can definitely sort of play around here a little bit. We can bring our blues down slightly, maybe change our aquas. You know, you can play around with the colors all you want, because it's abstract now, because it's this sort of different approach. You can basically do what you want. You could make it more purpley. I actually don't want to take it too far from what it was. I do want to add a little bit of blue in there. I like that we've got some of these like purpley tones. I think I'd like a little bit more of those in the sky. So what I might do is actually sort of try and separately edit the sky. Don't know if we've got a lot of orange. Oh, there is a bit of orange in that sky there. So let's, and a bit of yellow. So let's sort of grab our yellows and oranges, move those down slightly. Let's also go to our saturation and up those yellows. Yeah, there we go. So now we've got this nice hint of this nice orange sort of sunsetty light on the horizon, which I think looks really nice. Let's go back to another linear gradient now. I'm going to bring this down here. I'm just going to up that tint. There you go. Adding in a bit more of that magenta tone in the sky. Yeah, it's photoshopping it. It's more fake, but look at it. It's already a fake image. So we're going to just basically play with these colors until we get something that we really like. And I think this is already coming out quite nicely. Let's go back to our basic tones here. I think we can stand to have a little bit more like whites. Press OK. Boom. Look at that. Look at the huge difference that makes. Huge. We add back in our people, and that's basically it. I mean, it's not. I'm going to do a little bit more playing around with this just to neaten it up a little bit. In particular, their shadows, their reflections. The actual figures themselves look spot on. They look basic. If we just turn that off, that is exactly how they were before. So I don't really feel like we need to do anything there, but I am just going to grab the box selection tool, whatever you call that. We're going to do cut, paste on a new layer. Oh, okay, we're going to have to drag it into place like that. And I'm just going to firstly bring that opacity down ever so slightly because that reflection is a little bit too strong. And we are just going to go to filter, and this time we're going to use that motion blur. But I'm going to put it directly upright, turn it right down, because we do not need that much, but something like this, which just helps give it that sort of fade into the wet sand that we're looking for. But it has slightly meant that it's now blurring above the foot line, which isn't what we want. So I'm going to go in, and I'm just going to grab that again, and just here, move that up to about there, and then just delete that so none of this reflection appears above where those shoes are. And you can spend some time neatening this up all you want. Like there's a very harsh cutout line here, so I might, you know, if I was doing this as a real print or something, if I really wanted this to look amazing, I'd probably get the brush tool and I would just try and brush in some darker tones here just to make it feel like those shoes are connecting with the ground. I think the rushed edit I've done has made it look a little bit like they're floating. So this just reconnects them. It grounds them, literally grounds them. So we zoom out and there we go. They're in there and it looks exactly like I wanted it to. If we just turn that off and on, so you can see exactly how much you need that reflection. But crucially, that isn't the reflection that I've just painted in. It actually is the reflection that was there. If we just turn those off, go back to our original, it's exactly the same because we cut that out in the first place. But if you don't want to do that, you can do it another way. Let's have a look at another shot that I've done. This is one that I thought, again, really called for it. You've got this solitary figure with his dog on the beach, looks great, and this is what we turned it into. But with this one, I actually didn't copy that original reflection, even though it kind of looks like I did. I just wanted to try a different way, so I basically duplicated the man, vertically flipped him, and then added some blur effects and lowered the opacity. And it basically has the same result. So that's a great thing with Photoshop. There are all kinds of different ways you can do this. But again, this was an original image. It was a nice scene. We had that nice reflection, lovely clouds in the sky. I haven't created this from nothing. I haven't replaced the sky. So it is very much digital art hand in hand with photography, which is what I like about this. This isn't something I've just pulled out of thin air. And I think this has a really, really nice effect. And then this one as well that I did, it was just the runner going right across the middle of the scene. This was the before. Again, perfectly fine image, but this is one that you'd look at and go, yeah, it's fine, but I'm not that interested because it's not that, it's very messy with all of these lines in the sand, all of the, the coast. There's too much going on for the figure to stand out. By doing this, exactly the same technique, we've created something really, really peaceful, really, really eye-catching as well. And so you can see just how easy that is, but I think it looks really, really great. Again, not something that I would do all the time, not part of my normal work, but something that kind of came to mind and I thought be good to show it. So if you have enjoyed this though, do let me know what you think. Do pop your thoughts in the comments below. And make sure if you do give this a try yourself, share the results with me on Instagram with @BatteryHQ, and do of course also go and take a look at Thomas's work, which was the inspiration behind some of the shots. So again, I've left their Instagram handle in the description below. And if you have enjoyed this video, do please hit that like button, consider subscribing to my channel if you don't already, and I will see you next time.